I'm going through all the perks, ammo mods, and fit upgrades, testing every single base item with all 6 augments to figure out which ones are working, not working, busted, and also overpowered. Now, the next step on our journey is Double Tap, a very classic perk that just finally hit Black Ops 6 Zombies. Now in this video, we're diving down why your bullets feel sometimes weak even when you're stacking damage, right? Did you even know that one of the augments actually punishes you for using strong weapons and rewards you for being weaker? And the wildest thing I found is that 0 damage hits can still block those insta-kill effects without telling you. And yeah, we're even diving into the only combo in the game with 6 possible damage states per shot. Plus, I'll finally settle double impact versus double standard and how to tell which is better just by checking your crit rate. Now, if you love these stats and analytics, you can find much more at our Zombies wiki at zombiesinfohub.com, as well as in the comment section and description. But I would love to hear from you guys about your strategies on how you use double tap in this game. But with all that said, let's get right into today's video. Now, as always, I do have a disclaimer before getting into our video today. First off, if there's anything you guys want to skip around to, use those timestamps down below. It'll help you out massively. Second off, whenever I'm doing any of these sorts of testing, sometimes there might be a little bit of a variance. So I make sure that if there's anything more than like 5 or 6% of any differences on any variances, I go back and just retest it over and over until I can prove myself right. Now, today's deep dive is going to be formatted differently than some of my other deep dives, because all the double tap augments kind of just feed into each other in weird ways. So I'm going to kind of teach overall how everything works and then break down individual strategies and how augments stack both in and out of the perk itself. So let's just get into talking about double tap as a whole. So at base, double tap increases your weapon's fire rate by about 26.3%. So this is just a straight clean boost to your rate of fire across almost all weapon types in the game. Now, what does this mean exactly? Well, it simply reduces the delay between shots. So if you're using something like the PP919, it's going to take you about 20% less time to empty a magazine, going from about 32 seconds without double tap down to about 25.5 seconds with it. So that 26.3% increase directly translates to about a 26.3% increase in your DPS as well, which is huge. Now, real quick, I also want to clear up a major confusion that I've seen from a lot of people. There's a huge difference between reducing time and increasing rate of fire. So these two measurements aren't completely calculated the same way. Now, when you're calculating a decrease in time, you're figuring out how much faster you can perform that same action, like how quickly you can shoot all 30 bullets compared to before. You're compressing the time it takes to get through that same number of shots. But when you're calculating an increase in fire rate, you're trying to figure out how many more bullets you can shoot in that same window, that same fixed window of time. Like as an example, how many bullets can I now get, how many bullets can I now shoot in 10 seconds versus before? So that subtle difference actually matters depending on how you're playing and depending on the way you think about it. Just because another example is that like a 20% time reduction on like a 5 shots launcher might let you squeeze in an extra shot before the next animation, before the enemy moves or before you're swarmed or something like that, which can be a huge deal for certain builds to kind of think of it that way. So you're not necessarily just shooting faster, but you can also get the chance to be able to just hit more, right? Now, for purposes of this video though, we're going to be looking at everything in terms of rate of fire increase, because we're focused on how much more damage you can put out over time, not just how much faster animation is. But I also want to make sure that that distinction is clear, because it can be the difference between a decent build or a cracked one for some builds. And then also different creators out there are reporting different things. And so as an example, Lego Unlocked and Craig, shout out to them. They joined into my stream as we were doing some deep dive testing, and they were getting different percentages than me. And I just want to help kind of make sure that we all understand there's a difference between time and the difference between rate of fire increase. But here's something that's interesting. This increase isn't perfectly consistent across all the weapon types though. So automatic weapons get the full benefit, but burst weapons like the AEK only see improvements to like the burst speed itself, not the delay between bursts. So this means overall, burst weapons get less benefit from double tap than fully auto ones. And it gets even weirder with some semi-auto weapons. For example, my favorite weapon, the Goblin Mark II, it only sees about a 15% rate of fire increase when it's unpack-a-punched, and then about a 5% increase when it is packed. And I mean, that's a hell of a lot less than 26.3%, right? But why? So what we expect is that because there's a hard cap on how fast some of these weapons can fire. However, some of these full auto weapons, even with some of those binary triggers, don't even see the full benefit. And semi-auto weapons don't even see the full benefit. They might get around like 9.6% increase rather than a full 26.3%. But fortunately enough, for one of my new favorite weapons, the DM10, with double tap, even though it doesn't get that full crazy like extra 26% increase, that 9.6% increase is crazy and cracked out with double tap. Like insane. It pretty much turns the DM10 into a fully automatic weapon, almost faster and even more accurate with the right build. Now, before we move on, one other wild discovery, double tap actually affects score streaks and any kind of bullet style equipment. So you should go and check out the hand cannon because that was faster. And when the Death Machine releases, guess what? Now it's going to shoot 26.3% faster too. And if you're running through jet gun fuel, guess what? You're going to burn through it 26.3% faster too. So this isn't just like a gun perk though. It's just a universal fire rate booster, if you will. So let's move on to our first augment, double time. Now, double time increases your fire rate bonus even further, adding an additional 13% on top of double tap's base boost. Now, here's where things get super interesting because you might think that adding 13% to 26.3% will just add those together and 39.3% total, but it's actually 43.06%. Why? So it's multiplicative, not additive. So this is one of the most straightforward augments in this, really just in the game. It just makes double tap better at what it already does. And I gotta say too, the combo of double tap and double time is probably just the most reliable, consistent DPS boost in the entire game. Like there's no RNG, there's no weird mechanics. It's just straight up more bullets, more damage, more dead zombies, if you will. And of everything else that I say in the rest of this video, just these two combined is just a solid go-to, if anything. Now, in terms of sustained DPS increase, double time by itself adds 13% combined with base double tap. It gives you that massive 43.06% increase from base. So this is going to work across basically all of the same types of weapons that double taps affects. Again, also including score streaks. And just so you're not confused throughout the rest of the video, for comparison purposes, I am going to be showing both of those numbers when breaking down each augment. I'll always include the actual in-game total, which assumes that you're running the base double tap perk. Obviously, since like it's required for any of these augments to work anyway, you have to have it on. But I'm also going to isolate the individual augments on its own individual boost as if it were like a standalone. So that way you can truly, really compare each augment really in its own merit. That way, if you're doing any other theory crafting builds or you're looking to understand, like, I guess, maybe the impact of each augment more clearly, you'll be able to have both views, both the theoretical baseline and then also that practical application. So yes, you're going to see a lot of percentages in this video, but trust me, every last one of them is going to tell a different story. Now, I should also mention, as we learned from Donuts' video on double tap, if you guys have not watched it just yet, definitely check it out. But adding double time significantly increases your weapon's recoil pattern. It doesn't necessarily increase the pattern itself, but the base recoil just happens much faster, which just means that it's harder to control, especially on high recoil style weapons. You also burn through much more ammo faster, which can be a problem in the higher rounds as well. So while the DPS boost is massive, there is a real trade-off in terms of control and like ammo economy. Now, let's get into double or nothing, because this is one of the most interesting augments of this perk, and really of the entire game. This is one of the ones that I spent most of my time on. So double or nothing gives your weapon a chance to do double damage with each shot, but there is a catch. It also has a chance to do 0 damage, which we all know. Now, the breakdown for my testing is that about 15.2% of your hits will do double damage, while about 3.97% will do 0 damage. So this just means that about 1 in every 7.5 double damage shots will be balanced out by a 0 damage shot. And just to be a little bit more clear, I want to explain how I think Treyarch actually programmed this, because like 3.97% is a weirdly specific number. And normally we like to make things feel good, right? Because it's like they probably didn't just set it to 3.97% of total shots do 0 damage, right? More likely they set double damage shots at 15% of total shots, and then programmed 25% of your double damage shots to proc a 0 damage shot as a balance mechanism. Throughout this video, I'm going to specify whether I'm talking about percentage of 0 damage shots compared to total. So like 3.97% in this case, or compare it to double damage shots, 25%, compare it to obviously like double damage. So just want to clarify that so that way you understand where some of these numbers are going to be coming from. But this augment, it works on a per hit basis, not just per bullet. And this distinction is massive because it means shotguns, penetration builds, and any weapon that can just hit multiple zombies with one shot will benefit disproportionately, but in a good way. So when I test the shotguns, for example, about 7.5 of them, about 7.5 of individual pellet hits did double damage. But when measuring full shots, so like where multiple pellets hit, 23% of shots had at least one double damage pellet hit. That's a huge difference, especially when you think about it. And then also, let's talk about against bosses. It gets even crazier. 63% of shots had double damage pellets, and only about 9% of shots had any 0 damage. And that's just because bosses are obviously bigger targets, right? They're catching more pellets, giving each pellet its own chance to be able to, proc double damage, which is awesome. You can get multiple procs with each shot as well. Now, in terms of sustained DPS, you're looking at about an 11.47% on average with regular weapons. But if 0 damage wasn't even a factor, like if that wasn't even anything, it would actually be about a 15% increase. But that penalty is what's keeping it obviously from being otherwise broken, right? And so it just keeps it in check that way. Now, when you stack double nothing with double tap, though, that's where things start to really stack and get insane, right? Obviously, the sustained DPS boost jumped from 11.7% all the way up to 39.34%. And this is just because double tap's rate of fire increase multiplies with double or nothing's damage increase for that significant higher overall effect. And if you end up throwing Deadshot into the mix, right, with Deadhead Augment, I'm telling you, listen, first off, we cook it. We cook it. But the sustained DPS increase with Deadhead on will be able to reach 60.24%, which is almost unmatched by any other, I would say like base combo plus singular augment in the game like that. Now, the reason why this works so well is just because Deadshot's bonus 15% damage to headshots doesn't just add to overall double or nothing, it specifically multiplies with it. So whenever double or nothing procs on a headshot with Deadshot's Deadhead augment, you're going to be getting a massive damage spike that can pretty much even sometimes one-shot virtually any zombie in the game for a very long time. Now, this 3 augment combo, you got double tap base, and then also, double or nothing and Deadhead with Deadshot. It's probably one of the highest ceiling damage build multipliers in the entire game, just off rip, right? Especially with high pellet count weapons like shotguns, where you're going to see double damage procs on pretty much every shot. Well, 63% of them, right? But the only downside is obviously that 3.9% chance for 0 damage, right? Which can obviously leave you vulnerable at times, but depending on the build, it won't even matter. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later on and how to synergize with that to kind of remove some of that. Now, let's go ahead and move on to Double Jeopardy, which gives zombies at low health a chance to die immediately one shot. First off, I gotta say, y'all are hilarious because someone posted on Reddit whenever they saw the Double Jeopardy augment description, and you guys were like, Double Jeopardy gives zombies at low health a chance to die immediately one shot. The commenter was like, or the poster was like, well, I effing hope so. I thought that was so funny. And then one of you guys also tagged me in it and was like, don't worry, Charming, you got us, right? And of course, here you guys go. By the way, if you are not following our community over on Reddit as well, definitely come in and follow on Reddit. I make all of these videos into actual full broken down articles with all the images and things like that. The description will be in the comment section down below. But let's get back to Double Jeopardy. What's considered low health? So very similar to how it was with Death Perception. Turns out it's 20% of their total HP. Now, when zombies hit that threshold, and you hit them with a killing blow or one of those, marked for death, they become marked for death and have a chance to instantly die when they're shot. So that proc chance varies. I don't want to say it's the proc chance itself doesn't vary by round, but the field does, and the way that you're shooting and enhancing your weapons and things like that. So I did a handful of tests to find this. So in my first test, I just did between round 8 and round 10. It actually was about 31% proc chance. In my second test, which was around round 17 to 18, it was about a 48% proc chance. And then by the round 36, testing, showed that it reached about 50%. So it looks like it increases during the duration of the time, pretty much almost up to about capping out at that 50%. So it's kind of weird, the pop chance of it happening once you do get into that 20%, but I think that's also due to the damage. Now, you also get 15% or 15 essence per kill from those marked for death zombies, which might add up in the earlier rounds, but it becomes pretty negligible by round 36 when you're only getting, 810 bonus essence. If you kill every zombie on the round, right? That's as much as you're gonna get. So here's where Double Jeopardy gets complicated though. The sustained DPS increase varies wildly depending on how much damage your weapon does relative to zombie health. So I found that if your weapon deals about 10% of a zombie's total health per shot, as an example, if a zombie's total health is 10,000, that means if your weapon does 1,000 damage. So that's 10% of their total health. So if your weapon deals about 10% of a zombie's total health per shot, and the effect chance is at that higher 50%, you'll get about an 11% DPS increase. But if your weapon only deals about 5% of the health per shot, that's going to drop down to about an 8.1% increase. And that is solo based, just Double Jeopardy without double tap. Now, the most important thing though, if your weapon is too strong and deals more than 20% per shot, Double Jeopardy becomes almost completely useless outside of bullet penetration builds, because you're killing zombies before they ever even hit the 20% threshold where they could become marked for death. The other sad part about that is, let's just say that you're at 25% left of their health and you shoot them at 20% of their health, you've only got 5% left. The likelihood that next shot will be marked for death kill. I mean, again, if it's 50%, it's a 50% chance that it will, but regardless, that your next shot was going to kill them anyway. So this explains why Double Jeopardy doesn't really feel nearly as strong as the other major augments. Right, Double Impact has a straight up 25% sustained DPS increase in practice, while Double Jeopardy just maxes out at 11% under perfect conditions. Right, 50%, 50% proc chance at 10% of a zombie's total health per shot. And really, the reason why you want it at 10% is just because that allows you to have total of at least 2 shots in that threshold. So at 11% on a perfect conditions without double taps base increase, most weapons at health cap, which is 50,000 HP, are going to deal like 10% of that in one shot. So you usually see that 11% boost, but it really still, it doesn't really compare to the other options. Speaking of double impact, let's go ahead and talk about double impact. Arguably one of the most powerful augments in the entire game, to be honest with you. Double hits on the same target in quick succession deal more damage, specifically 50% more damage on that second shot. So that time window for this is about 2 to 3 seconds. I believe it is 2.5 seconds between shots. And it's actually time-based, not accuracy-based. So you don't need to land consecutive shots without missing. You just need to hit the same enemy twice within that window. Now, the sustained DPS from double impact alone is about 25%. But once you do add double tap, it jumps up to 56.25%. And you add double time into the mix and you got a whole boost of 71.875% or so on and so forth for that DPS boost, which is massive. Now, one cool synergy I guess I discovered is that if the enemy is frozen with cryo freeze during that second shot, then you actually get an additional, you add to that about 87.46% increase as well, instead of just like that base 50% increase. So that's also massive. And then I also note too that I'll say like while double tap plus double time plus double impact, like that trio gives you an incredible 71% DPS increase, it does come with some serious trade-offs. So the increased rate of fire from double time is going to make that recoil significantly harder to manage, right? As we talked about with Donut's video. But you also burn through ammo at an alarming rate. So if you're not hitting all your shots due to that increased recoil, your actual in-game DPS might end up being lower than what you'd get with a more controllable setup like double impact and double tap without double time. Sometimes the, I guess, quote unquote, best build on paper isn't the best build in practice if you can't control it. So let's go ahead and talk about double standard because it's simple in theory, right? All non-critical shots do double damage. Only applies to normal bullet weapons. This one is pretty straightforward conceptually, but I guess the implications of them are massive. So if you're purposely going for only body shots, then you'll get a theoretical 175% sustained DPS increase. That's huge, and that's okay, huge, right? That's a huge increase in practice, but when you start to, throw in that mix of headshots and body shots, then you're looking at about 111% sustained DPS increase max when it comes to having double tap, double time, double standard, and you got Deadshot as well in there. Now, the reason why double standard isn't completely breaking the game is that for most skilled players, hitting headshots with Deadshot will still do more damage, right? So this augment is really designed for players who struggle with headshots or even for just certain weapons where getting consistent crits is difficult. I guess something else that's crucial to consider with double tap, double standard builds, especially if you're pairing it with double time and Deadshot, is that while this combo does offer pretty insane potential DPS boost of that 110% plus, it is very unforgiving though if you're not accurate, right? So the faster fire rate from double time, once again, is just going to make your recoil harder to manage. And if you're missing shots entirely because of that recoil, your actual DPS is going to plummet dramatically. So just think about it, right? One missed shot is literally 0% DPS, right? Which is way worse than even a body shot with double damage. So ironically, even though double standard is meant to be forgiving for body shots, pairing it with double time can make it less forgiving overall because of the increased recoil. Now, for less accurate players, you might actually see better real world DPS with a more controllable double standard and double tap build, or even with one of the RNG based like double or nothing builds that at least gives you damage when you hit something, right? Lastly, we've got double play, which honestly is pretty underwhelming. Killing 2 enemies in quick succession has about a 33% chance to return 2 bullets to your magazine. Now, this translates to an average of about 0.66 bullets gained per double kill. But in my testing, that was about 6.5% average magazine expansion. It's not much, right? The problem is that this doesn't actually increase your DPS directly. It just slightly reduces how often you need to reload. Now, if you guys are following, or have been following me, I've talked a lot about Flo. He's another creator, specifically our DPS god for zombies. And his link is on me in the description down below. But you know, like when it comes to him, he talks about DPS per magazine and per your entire reserve stock. So that's where this starts to play in some, but I don't care about all those pieces of those kind of stats. I'll leave that up to Flo. Now, double play doesn't work with launchers or explosive like pack-a-punch weapons. And it benefits most with weapons with large magazines, medium, mid rate of fire, and can get consistent double kills, right? So even in ideal situations, right, the benefit is very minimal compared to the other augments. And I've spent days testing this, and honestly, I can't recommend it. I can't recommend it over any other options unless you're specifically trying to build for a maximum ammo efficiency build in high rounds, like ultra high rounds. Like, in fact, I'm not even going to bother breaking down synergies with this augment later on in the video. It's just not worth your time or even a perk slot, to be honest with you. I mean, there is one very niche scenario where it might be useful, and that's if you're using a high penetration sniper and you're getting consistently, 4 to 6 kills per shot. Now, in that specific case, you could see some decent ammo returns, but honestly, think about it, like Double or Nothing has the chance to do twice as much damage, which means enemies in a bullet penetration path, like in that damage range, will take more damage from a single shot, meaning that they could potentially die as well. Double time lets you shoot significantly faster. Either of these two options with a sniper will be more effective at crowd control than just getting back less than one bullet per double kill on average. So this augment is so unbalanced compared to the others that I just say stay away from it entirely. I mean, it feels like Treyarch designed it as like an afterthought, and the numbers really back that up. And speaking of numbers, if you've been enjoying this kind of breakdown, or if you got your own theories that you want tested, this is the part where I invite you to stop watching these videos by yourself. We've got a full Discord community where this type of analysis is just the beginning, right? Just this video. Plus, on top of that, we've got an upcoming gaming and software development showcase where our real community members, you guys, show off your mods, apps that you've built, indie projects and indie games that they're building, like Gerard, who's building a COD Zombies mod, I think for Black Ops 2, that actually changes how you play. We've also got a Dungeons and Dragons and mental health awareness event coming up too, where we're going to be talking about how tabletop D&D style games are actually being used for healing. And that's going to be hosted by founder of Dream Affinity LLC in our Discord. And if you're a writer or creator, don't miss our self-publishing workshop, how to publish your own content. And we'll actually show you how to get your stuff online onto Amazon and Barnes & Noble without any of those like gatekeeping publishing studios and all that stuff. So even if you're not just a hardcore gamer, our community is about more than just games. It's about creativity, community, showing up with your own ideas and building yourself. And honestly, you never know who you'll meet or what project you'll be a part of next. So the link is in the description. Come say what's up and join our next events. But now let's get back into the comparisons and matchups of Double Tap. Let's talk about some augment versus augment comparisons. Obviously, we need to settle the double standard and double impact debate once and for all. Now, when comparing double standard to double impact in a real world scenario, double impact narrowly beats double standard by about 5% DPS. That's it. Now, in my testing with viewers loadouts, double standard actually gave them about 30, or would have given them about 30,287 DPS, while double impact gave them 31,792 DPS. So this was with a player who had about a 21% crit hit rate. Now, the math shows that 20% crit hit rate is actually the exact equilibrium point between these two augments. So at exactly 20% critical hit rate, they perform almost identical. Below 20% crit rate, double standard is going to pull ahead for you. But above that 20%, double impact becomes increasingly better. And I really want to emphasize that this testing was done during regular gameplay, not even like specifically trying for only headshots or only body shots, just normal zombies gameplay with a mix of both like you regularly do. So your decision between one of these two augments should be based on your own personal headshot accuracy, which you can actually check if you go to the player stat section, as I'm showing you here, of the game settings menu. You'll be able to find what your average crit rate is. And then also you can break down by each of your weapons to figure out what your average is per weapon to be able to specifically figure out which choice is going to be better. Now, if you're landing headshots less than 20% of the time, just go with double standard. But if you're above 20%, double impact is going to be a better choice for you. Now, the weapon you're using also is going to matter a ton here. That's why I showed you that, because some weapons like shotguns or high recoil SMGs naturally get fewer headshots because of their spread patterns or the recoil. So for those weapons, double standard might just be better regardless of your skill level. Meanwhile, on the other side, precise, ARs or tactical ARs or those marksman rifles tend to get more headshots naturally, especially if you're really good at them, making double impact the clear winner for those types of weapons. Now, I want to talk about double jeopardy and double impact, because this is where we get one of my most surprising findings. So when looking at these two major augments side by side, most people would think that double impact is the clear winner. And to be honest with you, you mostly be right, just to spoil it. But the story is, I think, a little bit more complex than it appears at first. So double impact provides that consistent 56.25% sustained DPS increase with double tap, which is obviously huge, reliable, right? We already talked about that. Meanwhile, double jeopardy maxes out at about 11% sustained DPS increase if you've got a 50% effect chance at 10% of the zombie's HP. Most weapons, as I talked about before, at health cap deal about 10% of that in one shot at a base without stacking it. So you're normally, once you get to around health cap, you'll start to see that 11% DPS boost at that point. But here's where it gets interesting though. When you stack double jeopardy with double tap, you end up reaching 38.8% sustained DPS increase. And then you add double time to that and you reach 56.94% sustained DPS increase, which actually matches double impact with just base 56.25%. But double impact with double time ends up pulling ahead once again, coming up to that 71.8%, making it the stronger in those full builds. The key insight with double jeopardy is understanding that it's incredibly dependent on your weapon's damage relative to zombie health. If your weapon deals more than that 20% per shot, or even more than 10% per shot, then double jeopardy becomes almost useless outside of just bullet penetration builds. And that's just because you're killing zombies outright before they even reach that low health threshold where jeopardy could proc. On the other hand, though, here's the thing. If your weapon is too weak, so dealing like less than 5% damage per shot of the zombie's health, then you're only going to see about 3 to 4% DPS increase, which is literally pathetic. Now, more importantly, though, you're using a weapon that's just too weak in the first place. Remember, the goal of zombies isn't to try and get the most procs out of your augment. It's to kill zombies as fast as possible, right? Using an underpowered weapon just to make double jeopardy trigger more often is counterproductive against the purpose of the game. But if you're just trying to proc as often as possible, then yeah, go with a weaker weapon for whatever reason. Go under 5% damage per shot, which is a huge gamble, because if you've got like, a 2% damage, if you got 2% damage and you get your zombie from 50,000 HP down to 9,998, and your next shot kills him instantly, then yeah, you just got rid of a crap ton of shots. But at what cost, right? That sweet spot is around 10% damage per shot, which is where you get 2 chances to proc the effect within that crit hit range or that critical health range of 20%. So any higher damage than that 10%, and you're going to get fewer chances before the zombie dies anyway. And then any lower, you're just spending way too many shots going from 100% to 20%, and that triggering to get to that triggering threshold, like, it's not worth it. It is in some cases, but again, at that 10%, it's the perfect sweet spot. Now, I did also discover one other unique edge case while watching Lego Unlocked. If you one-shot a zombie into the 20% health range with a delayed damage effect like Napalm Burst or the Wonder Waff is what I noticed with, I ended up testing Napalm Burst myself and found it, but I didn't see until I was watching Lego Unlocked up in like around 170 or something. It actually still has a pretty good chance of triggering the Mark for Death, which is cool for the Wonder Waff. But outside of this niche scenario, Double Impact is going to be just your more reliable option for nearly all builds. Real quick, let's talk about Double Time versus garbage double play, or excuse me, versus double play. Double Time gives you a reliable 13% DPS increase on its own and 43% when stacked with double tap. Double play at best might save you a reload every 12 rounds or something like that. This isn't even a competition. Double Time is just objectively better in virtually every scenario, unless you're running a specific high round strat where ammo conservation is, I guess, your only priority. Now, let's deep dive. Let's dive deep into how Double or Nothing interacts with the other major augments. Because to be honest with you, this is where things get the most interesting and where I spent most of my time testing. Double or Nothing and Double Jeopardy. So this pairing seems like it will be strong on paper, but actually it's pretty underwhelming in practice. The biggest issue is that if you get a 0 damage hit on a zombie that's under that 20% health, they'll get the Mark for Death effect visually, which is cool, but it doesn't actually insta-kill them. That 0 damage hit effectively wastes your Double Jeopardy proc. Now, I spent 2 hours just trying to see this interaction in action to show for you guys. And when I finally caught it happening, it confirmed what a lot of us expect, that 0 damage hits simply don't trigger that insta-kill effect from Double Jeopardy. Additionally, if your weapon is strong enough to bring a zombie into that 20% health range in one hit, then Double or Nothing might actually waste your potential to benefit from Double Jeopardy. So if you get a double damage proc, you might just kill the zombie outright before it ever reaches that low threshold. Now, the one scenario where this combo works really well is with damage over time effects, like Napalm Burst. So if you hit a zombie and the initial damage gets them to the 20% health range, the lingering fire ticks can be doubled through Double or Nothing, killing them faster. And even if you get 0 damage hit on those ticks, it's still a tick of fire that can kill them on the next cycle. But honestly, this is such a niche use case. I can't really recommend building for it unless you're in Liberty Falls, where both bosses are weak to Napalm Burst. In that case, yeah, this is massive, but you can't get access to double tap until after round 25. So at that point in time, it's like, well, really, what are you waiting for? All right, up next, let's talk about Double or Nothing and Double Standard. So this combination should be amazing in theory. And Double Standard, obviously, because Double Standard is making all body shots do double damage, and Double or Nothing has the chance to double that damage again for quadruple damage on body shots. But the numbers actually tell a different story. So in my testing, the total sustained DPS increase from combining these two augments is only an additional 7% over just using Double Standard with double tap, allowing you to use something else. 7%. That's horribly low. Now, breaking down my testing results, without bullet penetration, 81.5% of hits were double damage from Double Standard, 5% were 0 damage hits from Double or Nothing, and then 13.5% were 4 times or quadruple damage hits, both augments proccing at the same time. And then with bullet penetration weapons, it's pretty much about the same, 83% double damage, 5.5% 0 damage, and then 11% quadruple damage hits. But the problem is this, that 5% 0 damage chance from double or nothing just really cuts into the consistent benefit from double standard. So instead of getting a massive damage boost you'd expect, you just get a garbage measly 7% improvement from just like, that's all double or nothing does. Double or nothing just adds 7% increase to like multiplicatively to double standard by itself. Now let's go ahead and talk about double or nothing and double impact, because this, I feel like, is where double or nothing truly shines. This combo creates literally like a monster DPS increase of 60% when I tested it. So let me break down the exact rules of how these two augments interact, because there's some wild mechanics happening here that I have not seen anybody else talk about. Granted, I literally don't watch anybody else's videos on the augments and perks and such until after I do mine. But normally, so that way I'm not kind of, you know, but because Lego Unlocked and Craig, they joined into my stream, we were doing some testing together, and then, you know, somebody said that Donuts has some different stuff. I went to see what Donuts had to say in comparison to what Lego had to say in comparison to me, but the three of us make completely different types of content for our audiences anyway, so it ended up being completely different like strats and stuff. But anyway, let's go ahead and talk about some of these mechanics that I don't think nobody's talking about. First rule of this pairing is that the second shot only benefits from double impact. Double impact only boosts that second shot on the same enemy within that 2 to 3 second window, which we know. You cannot get double impact damage on the first shot ever. The second shot must land on that same enemy to trigger the 50% added bonus. Second rule, double or nothing procs independently on each shot. Double or nothing's 15% chance for damage and that almost 4% chance for 0 damage applies to both shots independently. So these like random rolls happen separately from what double impact is doing and does not affect its chance to trigger at all. Third rule, the damage state breakdown for this. So for all the first shots, for normal damage, normal damage accounts for about 78.5% of first shots. For 78.5% of first shots. Double damage from double or nothing accounts for 11.9% of first shots, and then 0 damage of double or nothing counts for almost 10% of first shots. Now for the second shot, the 1.5 damage from double impact, so that 50% boost, accounts for 91.8% of second shots. Triple damage from double or nothing and impact together accounts for 7 and almost 0.5% of those second shots. And then 0 damage from double or nothing accounts for only about 0.25% of second shots. That's massive because of these reasons right here. One, you cannot just get double damage on the second shot ever. It's either 1.5 times from impact alone, or 3 times from both augments, or 0. 2, you cannot get triple damage on the first shot. Triple damage only happens whenever double or nothing procs on the second shot because it already has the impact bonus waiting for it. 3, 0 damage hits don't break that impact chain. You can get a 0 damage first shot and still it'll set up for the second shot to get the bonus. This is great because about 80% of 0 damage hits happen on the first shot, which is really good because they're less disruptive there than they are on the very crucial second shots where you can potentially get those massive 3 times as much damage. Now this creates a far more consistent damage profile than you'd really expect. And the most reliable finding from my testing is that high RPM, accurate weapons are going to benefit the most from this combo. Shotguns are really good too, but their spread sometimes can make it a little bit harder to hit to hit the same zombie twice consistently. But what does all this math actually mean for your gameplay? In practical terms, when you have both double or nothing and double impact equipped, about 43.5% of your total shots do regular damage, 40% 1.5 times, 6.6% will do double damage, 3.3% is going to do triple damage, and only 5.6% will do 0 damage. This whole combination gives you, I think, the highest potential damage spikes in the game while maintaining a more consistent sustained DPS than just pure double or nothing builds, and at a rate of 60% sustained DPS increase. So that's just, I think, one of the most powerful augment pairings in the game, in this case for damage. One other important thing to note before we get off of this part is while double tap and double time and double impact combo does offer that significant like DPS boost of 71%, this double or nothing impact at 60% pairing is actually just more forgiving if you're not the most accurate player. If you're missing shots due to the increased recoil from double time, your DPS with that quote unquote perfect build is going to go down dramatically. The double or nothing and double impact combo is more RNG based, but that randomness can actually work in your favor if you're not consistently landing every shot. Plus, without double time in the mix, then you'll have better recoil pattern and obviously a much better ammo economy for high rounds too. Let's talk about how double tap's augments interact with other perks in the game. Deadshot is, I think, the ultimate companion to double tap, right? When you add Deadshot with its, crit hit bonus to a double tap and double time, like double impact build, you can reach a practical DPS of minimally like 120%. And that's based on real world example from one of my viewers who actually had only just 21% headshot accuracy rate. If your headshot accuracy is any higher than that at all, which I'm sure many of you probably are, this DPS increase scales dramatically upwards. Players with, I'll say, around 40 to 50% headshot accuracy could potentially be seeing increases of around 150 to 160% with this combination. Then you got depth perception with critical eye augment that also plays really well with double tap builds, particularly with double or nothing. Right? When you stack these together, you're looking at potential for 60% plus sustained DPS with double tap, double or nothing, plus Deadshot crit hits as well. It's just really, really good. For double standard users, if you pair Deadshot, it might seem counterintuitive, but it actually creates a more balanced damage profile. So your headshots are still going to do critical damage while your body shots all do double damage, which is just going to reduce the penalty for those missed headshots and gives you just closer to more consistent DPS. With all this data, what are the best ways to use double tap? So for consistent, no nonsense damage, you just want to go with double tap, double time, double impact. That's just going to give you a reliable 71% DPS increase with no RNG, no special conditions. Just be aware that this combo is going to burn through ammo incredibly fast just because of double time's fire rate boost. And then also the faster rate of fire is going to make it noticeably harder to control. If you're struggling with accuracy or find yourself run out of ammo too quickly, just consider using or dropping double time for something more sustainable. You can definitely also add into it your Deadshot with dead head, and even adding in cryo freeze. You're gonna get crazy amounts of boost. I think over 125%. If you're just, again, over 125% DPS boost, that means like you take whatever your current DPS is, multiply it by 2.25% with all that stacked. That's crazy. Literally crazy. And that's only if you're averaging about 21% headshots. If you struggle with headshots or you want a more forgiving build, double tap, double time, and double center will give you tremendous body shot damage while still allowing you to benefit from the occasional headshot. This is going to give you around that max 111% DPS boost in practice. But remember, this is assuming that you're actually landing all your shots. The increased fire rate from double time significantly increases your recoil. So if you find yourself missing shots entirely because of that recoil, you might just be better off with just double standard and double tap and then choosing a different minor augment. A hit with double damage is infinitely better than a complete miss. Now for penetration builds with like shotguns or LMGs, double tap, double impact, and double or nothing is going to be incredibly powerful, since you're going to get multiple chances to proc double damage with every shot, or even three times as much. Now this combo is going to be more RNG dependent, but with like a high pellet shotgun, SVD, or so on, you'll be able to see those double and triple damage procs on almost every shot. The randomness is actually a bit more forgiving for less accurate players too, since you can still get those extra damage procs even if you're only landing some of your shots or some of your pellets. For super high rounds where I guess ammo efficiency matters, maybe you can add double play to the mix. But honestly, if you're just better off going with one of the other builds above and finding another way to manage ammo. If you're on Liberty Falls, which is a special case, remember that double tap doesn't unlock it to round 25 when the Wonder Fizz machine actually appears. For this map specifically, it does make sense to run double Jeopardy with Napalm Burst because both bosses on this map are weak to fire. And then if you pair this with Critical Eye from Depth Perception 2, you're gonna have a really good effective build just for the map's challenges overall. But once you do hit that round 25 and you get access to double tap, it's like, okay, well, at that point, doesn't matter, to you. And so it's up to you at that point. So let me clear up some confusion that I've kind of seen in the community so far. First off, double or nothing is not just a 15% damage boost. The 0 damage chance makes it more complicated, and its effectiveness is just going to vary massively depending on your weapon type. Multi-pellet weapons get significantly more benefit than single bullet ones. Second, double or standard is not just for bad players. Even skilled players can benefit from it in certain scenarios like boss fights where critical spots are constantly moving, right? Or with weapons that have poor headshot multipliers. Ones without CHF barrels. Third, double tap does not boost all weapons equally. As I mentioned, semi-auto, burst weapons, binary trigger weapons get significantly less benefit than fully automatic ones, just because of that cap and things like that. Lastly, double Jeopardy is not useless. It's just very situational. Its effectiveness, I think, is entirely dependent on your weapon damage relative to zombie health, making it strongest with weak weapons against those tankier zombies and with armor as well. That's everything for double tap and its augments. If today's video has taught you something, drop a like and let me know in the comments which augment combination that you plan to run or that you might be changing. I know that you guys have missed, I hope you guys have missed my perk deep dive since we finished the entire first set of 10. But man, it's been fun and incredible, but long. I've spent over 99 hours on this, which I guess technically, this is crazy. It's been 100 hours probably by the time I finish recording this. So I also want to give a huge thanks to everyone in our Discord community who's helped with, some testing, especially Gerard. He always provides really good insights on fire rate stuff. He did like a lot of our fire rate code this time. Also, big shout out to Lego Unlocked and Craig for joining my stream and verifying these numbers. They're also in our Discord community, which is still huge. And I also want to give a huge massive shout out to Flo. I talked about him earlier. He's our absolute Zombies DPS knowledge god. You can find his links below for all of his in-depth weapon damage info, weapon damage calculations, DPS stuff. I mean, he's just a crazy wealth of knowledge when it comes to damage per second, DPS, damage, whatever. He's literally like my J God to Warzone as me to Exclusive Ace, but Flo is. So check him out. And also he has a Discord community as well. You guys can go. I don't really usually cover, the in-depth weapon damage stuff because that's his specialty. I just focus more on comparisons, augments, synergies, and things like that. I'll also give a special thanks to Cameron VT, Flower, I believe, in Discord, who's he's just always right there with me. Literally ready for whatever we're testing, playing, theorizing about, whatever. He's also provided a lot of gameplay clips as well. So he's always down to help out with testing. He brings I guess, my much needed comic relief whenever I'm just deep in stats mode. So thanks to all of you guys for everything. If you guys do want to join our theory crafting community, the Discord link is in the description. And if you haven't checked out my last deep dive, which is on Cryo Freeze, definitely check it out because I made a massive mistake about what I talked about with Cryo Freeze being kind of weak, and you need to go check that out. So the video's on the screen now. Check that out. With that, have a beautiful goddamn day, and I will see you guys in this video. Bye, guys.